Hello and welcome to Nafdac Today. This is a program through which the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, Nafdac, intimates you on her policies, strategies, and activities geared towards ensuring that only genuine regulated products under its purview are made available to the public and that the health of the Nigerian people is safeguarded. I am Deji Owotomi.
The efforts to bring Nigeria at par with top-notch regulatory agencies across the globe had never received as strong a push as the one it began to have since Professor Mojisola Adeyeye assumed office as the Director General of the agency. Chief among the visions Professor Mojisola Adeyeye had at the time was to make Nafdac attain global benchmarking, as the journey began shortly after she took the mantle of leadership at the regulatory agency.
Nafdac embarked on global benchmarking in January 2018, just a month plus after I resumed duty. Why is it so important for any regulatory agency to embark on global benchmarking? It is very important because through the global benchmarking, the regulatory agency is being compared to the best regulatory agency in the world. And they are being guided to use international standards. However, the goal of benchmarking is to ensure that the public health is protected. We have 9 modules for the global benchmarking. This is WHO global benchmarking, and it started from World Health Assembly Resolution 67.20, where world leaders came together to say that, or to state that regulatory agencies must be strengthened in order for the products that they are controlling to be of quality, to be safe, and to be effective, to be efficacious. So the bottom line of global benchmarking is protection of public health. Like I mentioned, we have 9 modules or 9 functions on which Nafdac was benchmarked for, just like any other regulatory agencies in the world. And I will give some examples. Regulatory system, we call it RS. RS is a function that WHO needed to ensure that it is robust. And RS is about the overall administrative function of a regulatory agency. And this can be as simple as customer service. In fact, it can be as simple as how does the receptionist welcome guests. RS has sub-indicators, meaning different things that a regulatory agency must have in place. Does the regulatory agency has a conducive environment for staff to work? Does the regulatory agency has a conducive environment to welcome clients? Does the regulatory agency has enough staff? Does the regulatory agency has enough tools to carry out regulatory activities? Vehicles, computers, laboratory equipment? So those are examples of things that WHO wants to see that they are in place under RS. Those are just examples. Another is market authorization, which is the drug approval process function. What are the tools that are put in place for an application that was submitted for drug approval? What are the tools that are put in place to ensure that that application goes through the system in a reasonable time? Does that regulatory agency has enough staff? Does that regulatory agency has enough internet provision? Because when you are doing drug approval process, the applicant may submit 500 pages in their package. Does that regulatory agency has standard operating procedure? An application comes in, how long does it take for the dossier reviewer to review? How long does it take for the laboratory, for the application to be passed on to inspection directorate? How long does it take for the inspection directorate to inspect or to put together facts about the company? So that is another example of a function under global benchmarking. Another example is laboratory testing, LT. You cannot be a strong regulatory agency when you don't have equipment, lab equipment to test. When you don't have laboratory information management system to ensure that product A that is being tested, once that product is submitted, it is followed through until the results of the testing are put in place and documented very well. How robust is the quality assurance of the lab? I've given 3 examples. There are 9 examples, 9 modules rather, or 9 functions. One of the functions is license establishment, which is the one that Pharmacy Council of Nigeria is in charge of. To have a robust healthcare delivery system, to have a strong regulatory agency, how robust is the site licensing, which is what Pharmacy Council of Nigeria does, our sister regulatory agency. How frequently do they do inspection? What of their documentation? Do they use quality management system, which both agencies must use? So that is why global benchmarking is the best thing that can happen to a regulatory agency. It is focused towards public health protection, and it has changed Nafdac around. We have gone through from level 1 to level 3 that we are in now, and we are going to level 4. We are going to WHO listed authority. Extremely important to protect public health.
You have been watching Nafdac Today. Please stay tuned. The program continues shortly after this break.
Nafdac hereby alerts the public on the requirement of export for its regulated product in order to curb rejection and boost the nation's trade, image, and economy. It is imperative that every Nafdac regulated product, food, drugs, cosmetics, medical devices, chemicals, etc., is issued certificate before export. In view of the above, exporters should know the following. Testing of products for export by Nafdac is free. Nafdac testing ensures that products are safe, best practices are upheld, and as such, there is no issue of rejection in the country receiving the products. Upon satisfactory adherence to the export guidelines and requirements, Nafdac will issue export certificate to qualified exporters. Intending exporters must adhere to exporting country specifications, guidelines, and regulations. Visit the nearest Nafdac office and www.nafdac.gov.ng to be guided.
Nafdac, customer-focused, agency-minded.
Thanks for staying tuned.
Dr. Joseph Anthony Ortin, a Deputy Director, the Manager, Global Benchmarking Tool in Nafdac, also speaks on the monumental stride taken by the agency under the leadership of Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, and how the agency has been strengthened by the attainment of Maturity Level 3.
Professor Mojisola Adeyeye came with a winning strategy to Nafdac. And in 2018, in January precisely, because she came in 2017, November, she constituted a 10-man committee, which is a team, to run with what we call a system strengthening program that has been marked by WHO. And this program was based in the World Health Assembly, that is WHO, Resolution 6720. It is to bring all national regulatory authority into a unified monitoring value to see how drugs are manufactured, produced, sold, distributed, that will have the same equity in terms of quality, safety, efficacy across the globe. Because the menace of substandard and falsified medicines has no boundary. So other NRAs countries need to be brought on board so as to have a uniformity in the system. So the World Health Assembly mandated WHO as at then in 2014 to commence the program called Global Benchmarking, and it has its own facets. In this, it is being ranked into the maturity level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each of the classes and each of the maturity level have its own coding. That is, if you are maturity level 1, it means that you just have some evolving regulatory system, but not too functional. And presently, as are the statistics of this year, according to WHO, there are 97 countries in the world that are still in maturity level 1. And out of 184 member nations of WHO, just look at that statistics. 97 are maturity level 1. Then 36 out of which are in maturity level 2. So you can see when you add these two together, we are looking at a very huge percentage, about 60-something percentage of all the NRAs in the world are operating below the limits of classic production of drugs. And that's why to eradicate the substandard and falsified medicine is a big fight. So Nigeria took it by the bull, and the goal of that WHO then is that all NRAs should attain maturity level 3. Maturity level 3 means you are a stable, well-functioning regulatory system. That is, you have all it takes to produce, regulate medicines from cradle to grave, and how it rolls out from medicines and vaccines.
Pharmacist Khadijat Adiabolade, Director, Vaccines, Biologics and Medical Devices Registration and Regulatory Affairs, speaks on the Nafdac's collaborations with relevant organizations and agencies.
In regulation of medicines and medical products generally, it's not something that any individual organization can do on their own. You need to be able to collaborate with others. You need to be able to rely on others, to be able to optimize your resources. So it took a lot for us to get to maturity level 3. It took a lot of resilience from the leadership of the agency led by Professor Christiana Mojisola Adeyeye and the Registrar of Pharmacy Council, Pharmacist Ibrahim Babashew. The leadership, was really the driving force for the two organizations to be able to achieve this feat. Like I said, it took a lot. We had to undergo a lot of training. We had to undergo a lot of alignments, collaboration, even certifications for the two organizations.
Another area that has helped to strengthen Nafdac operations on the attainment of WHO global benchmarking is periodic product evaluation and analysis.
Now we have a system in place to evaluate the dossiers that come into the country with the products, to be sure that the documentations that are in those dossiers are same with what the products are. And the laboratories are also well positioned to even evaluate the quality, continually evaluate the quality of medicines that we have in our ecosystem. So we have, from time to time, we have analysis conducted on products that are out there, the post-market surveillance of the products that we have. So when we go out there, depending on what the plan is at the time, the agency samples products from different levels in the supply chain cadre, from the hospitals, from the tertiary hospitals, from the open market, from the pharmacies, So when these samples or products are sampled, they're actually brought to the lab and we analyze them to be sure that the products that we have out there that people have access to are of the right quality. Basically, economically, it's going to help the country because now people will trust our systems. Because the medicines there in the market can only be as good as the people that are regulating them. If you have a stringent or a functional and stable regulatory system, which we currently have in the agency, it shows that you are already positioned to ensure that the products that are in your space in the country, that the products that we have in the country is of the right quality. You also build capacity amongst the regulatory inspectors that go out to inspect facilities that manufacture medicines, not just within the country, but even outside the country. So that when people now come to procure medicines from us, when people intend to do medicines from us, maybe they who want to procure medicines for their different regions, they are sure that those products are of the right quality. See, it opens up that commerce for the country, which we didn't have before. Because one of the big gains that we also seen is the issue of helping us curb substandard and falsified medicines. Before now, our market has been reading with a lot of substandard and falsified medicines, which in most cases, people are not really comfortable, especially in the area of drug procurement, having that confidence to procure medicines made in our own space. But currently, with the agency having a maturity level 3 in place, it builds confidence even in people that want to do business in the country, especially when it comes to the business of pharma manufacturing, vaccines manufacturing, and procurement, because they are sure that the national regulatory authority in place is stable and is functional and has the capacity to regulate the entire system. For currently, the lab that has the accreditation is Central Drug Control Laboratory, YABA. However, the laboratory, that is Nafdac Laboratories now, because we have 7 laboratories in the agency. Nafdac Laboratories have a harmonized quality management system. And what this means is that we have the same modus operandi. We have the same technical procedures. We have the same quality management system procedures. So technically, what happens in CDCL is also what happens in the Maiduguri area laboratory. Currently, we're preparing that laboratory for laboratory accreditation. And before the first quarter of next year, the lab in Maiduguri hopefully will be accredited. The other laboratories in Nafdac, that are 5 laboratories that have formal accreditation from the American National Accreditation Body. Those laboratories are, the first one was the food laboratory in Oshodi. That's the food and chemical laboratory in Oshodi. We have another laboratory that is accredited, that is the laboratory in Agulu. Then we have Vaccine, Biologics and Medical Devices Laboratory, is also in Lagos, is accredited. And finally, we have the laboratory that is in Kaduna. So those are the 5 laboratories in the agency that are accredited. And like I said earlier, we have a harmonized quality management system so that in any of these laboratories that you work in, if the scope is food, it's the same procedure. If the scope is medicine, it's the same procedure.
Well, someone will ask, Nafdac sell food and drug, chemical, cosmetics, and other things, but why the emphasis on drug? Because of the, so when the risks outweigh the benefits. For now, there is a high volume of SF product across the globe, and that's why WHO, in our own wisdoms, choose this to masticate to start with medicines and vaccine for now. The next stage is for medical devices. The third stage is for blood and blood products. But for food benchmarking, someone will ask, there is no food global benchmarking activities from WHO at the moment, currently on the surface of the earth. But the wisdom of the current management of Nafdac, whatever we are doing in medicines, whatever procedure they ask us to put or processes that we know that it will strengthen the system, will replicate both to food regulatory directorate, to chemical, to veterinary medicines, and also to the system that flows around the state. So we are incorporating that, borrowing some of those good system strengthening programs and adding them to food and other products to flow. But currently, there is no benchmarking by WHO on food, as it were.
All these giant strides that have been made by Nafdac have not been without quite daunting challenges.
Of course, there's always challenges. There's challenges of data integrity, ensuring that all these data are safe. There's challenges of cyber security. So it's a function of the ICT to ensure that all these issues are mitigated against, and that we don't have a system that is not reliable. So we always ensure, we always try to create environments that can guarantee the quality of data, the quality of the integrity of data information. And there's always need for training, retraining, even of the ICT staff, of the regulatory staffs, on the use of information technology, of the use or management of information from one office or one directorate to another. So we keep all those things.
Inadequate funding, because all these things that we are talking about WHO GBT require funding. So we need funds. We are challenged by inadequate funding of the agency, because we have to bend backward financially before we can get to this point. Now, another challenge that we have is inadequate personnel to do the work. As of today, one person is doing the job of 10. Nafdac staff are not working like civil servants. I'm sorry to say if that is offensive, but we are not working like civil servants that their work period stop at 4. No, even on weekends. How I wish we can have 48 hours in a day. We work throughout. The DG can call you anytime for anything, and you have to do it, because there is nobody to do it. But she imbibed that into us, and we accepted it, and we followed all our guidances, and here we are today. We are good for it, but not without those challenges.
That's all we have for you on this episode of Nafdac Today. We shall return with another insightful package next week. Please note that Nafdac is always ready to receive your comments, complaints, or reports about peddlers of fake drugs and adulterated food products, or any other activity that could pose a threat to public health. You can reach Nafdac via our toll-free numbers. For inquiries, call 0700-162-3322. And for complaints, call 0800-162-3322. You may also email nafdac@nafdac.gov.ng. And if you have complaints about any form of misconduct, you can reach out to Reforms Unit via email, reforms@nafdac.gov.ng, or call the Reforms hotlines on 0909-763-0506 or 0909-763-0507. Nafdac, customer-focused, agency-minded. Do not engage in anything that could jeopardize Nafdac's efforts to safeguard public health. See you again next week.